The bafe was calling my name when Miss Stepson swayed, grabbed the edge of the bench, and went down hard on the courthouse tile. People gasped. Someone yelled for a medic, and all I could think was Elaine. You always said the truth shows up eventually. 3 weeks earlier, I was standing on the front porch of the house on West Richwoods Boulevard, the one I'd lived in for 14 years, holding a Hive grocery bag that was already starting to sweat through the plastic. Milk, eggs, a roti seriakin that was still warm when I picked it up. The sheriff stood just off me right shoulder, polite, middle-aged, the kind of man who smells faintly of aftershave and winter air. He cleared his throat the way people do when they didn't want to be there. Behind the storm door, I heard the metallic click of a brand new deadbolt. My stepson, Derek Holt, twisted the lock with a slow, deliberate motion. He didn't look at me right away. He was smiling at his phone thumb, flicking across the screen like this was just another errand on his list. When he finally met my eyes, "Hesed, you don't live here anymore." Few words didn't land all at once. They came in pieces like hail hitting a windshield sharp, scattered hard to process. "I just ran to the store," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Toothin', my jacket's inside and my pills. I need my." Derek opened the door just wide now to reach out. He took the grocery bag from my hand and dropped it on the concrete step. Thud, milk sloshed. The bag tipped and one of the eggs cracked clean through the carton. Yellow started spreading like a slow stain. "Buy new ones," he said already, turning back inside. "Keys now." I looked at the sheriff. He didn't meet my eyes, just shifted his weight and said, "Sir, I'm here to keep the peace." Peace. That word almost made me laugh. The pork stall had the faded American flag Elaine insisted on hanging every Memorial Day. The screen door creaked the same way it always had, a long tired squeal that used to joke sounded like it needed oil and a prayer. Inside I could see the corner of the living room, the brown recliner Elaine loved. The one where she sat every night with her feet tucked under her, humming along to whatever old song happened to be on the radio. American Pie. Usually she never remembered all the words, but she hummed like it mattered. "Ray," Derek said sharper, "no. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder." I pulled my keys from my pocket. My hand was shaking. I hadn't noticed until the metal rattled against itself. One for years of coming and going through that door. Fixing the loose hinge, repainting the porch rail. Mowing fell on every Saturday morning at 8 on Thedet. And now I was handing it all over like I'd borrowed the place for a weekend. I held the keys out. Derek took them without touching my hand. "Your stuff will be boxed," he said. "I'll call you." "My prescriptions," I tried again. "They're in the bathroom cabinet." "I just need." He didn't even turn around this time. "Not my problem." The door shut. Then you lock slid home with a final ugly clack. The sheriff waited a beat, then tipped his hat. "I'm sorry, sir." I stood there a moment longer than I should have, staring at the place where feet or frame met the siding. There were still pencil marks there, faint but visible, where Elaine used to measure Derek's height when he was a kid. 1,213, 14, she laughed every time he shot up another inch. He'd forgotten those marks were there. I hadn't. I picked up the grocery bag. The bottom gave out completely this time, and the chicken rolled onto the step, grease soaking into the concrete. I left it there. My Ford Taurus was parked at the curb, same spot I'd parked it 1,000 times. A 999 model. Not pretty, but it started every morning if you treated it right. I opened the trunk and tossed in the one thing Derek had allowed me to take. A duffel bag with a couple changes. Off clothes in a shoebox I'd grabbed from hall closet when he wasn't looking. The shoebox had my handwriting on the lid. "Important papers, Ray only." I sat in the driver's seat for a long time before turning the key. The house looked smaller from the street. Or maybe I did. It started to rain as I pulled away. Not a storm, just a steady cold drizzle that dotted the windshield and made everything blur around the edges. It drove without thinking, ended up in a grocery store parking lot a few miles away. The same chain, different location, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I reclined the seat and stared at the ceiling fabric. My phone buzzed once. A voicemail from Derek I didn't listen to. Elaine had been gone 3 weeks. Stroke. No warning. One day, we were arguing about whether the furnace needed replacing before winter. The next, I was standing in a hospital hallway holding her purse because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. 14 years, and no, I was sleeping in my car with the heater barely working, rain tapping on the roof like someone trying to get my attention. I whispered it out loud, best the silence felt too big. Was I really just a guest? I didn't know fiends were yet, but the shoebox in my trunk felt heavier than it had any right to. The law office smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner, the kind that never quite masked what came before it. Henderson and Pike had been on the corner of Main Street longer than I'd lived in Peoria. A squat brick building with brass letters on the door, and a waiting room that hadn't changed since a late 8 South. I showed up 10 minutes early because that's how Elaine and I did things. Early was respectful. Early meant you cared. Derek arrived late. It hurt him before I saw him. Hard sod shoes clicking down the hallway. His voice loud and casual like he was walking into a bar instead of a Will Redding. He was wearing a dark suit that looked too expensive for a Tuesday morning. The sleeves just a hair too long. Like he'd bought it off the rack and hoped confidence would do the tailoring. Sorry, traffic, he said, grinning at no one in particular. Had dropped into the chair across from me and stretched his legs out, ankle crossed over knee. I noticed the watch right away. Big face, shiny, the kin people buy to look successful, not because they need to know the time. Nice place, he added, glancing around. Bethis costs a fortune. I didn't answer. My hands were folded in my lap, knuckles white against the fabric of my old flannel shirt. I'd worn it without thinking. Elaine liked it on me. Said, it made me look steady. An elderly woman sat at a desk near the door, shuffling papers with careful hands. She had soft gray hair pulled into a bun and glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. When she looked up and met my eyes, she gave me the smallest nod. Not pity, just recognition, like she understood how these things usually went. Mr. Holt, a man called from Theater Way. Derek jumped up. That's me, and Mr. Collins, the man added, glancing at a folder. I stood, my knees scraped loud in the quiet room. Derek smirked like he'd noticed. The conference room was tight, rectangular for chairs, a clock ticking on the wall with the persistence of a dripping faucet. Someone had tried to brighten it up with a fake plant in the corner, but the leaves were dusty. Theaterny mid-50s thinning hair nameplate reading Robert Pike cleared his throat and opened the file. I'll keep this brief, he said. We're here to read last will and testament of Elena Mary Collins. Derek leaned back, hands folded behind his head. He looked bored. I kept my eyes on the table. There was a faint ring where someone had set down a coffee mug years ago. I traced it with me thumb. Slow and steady, the way Elaine used to trace circles on the back of my hand when she was thinking. Elena named her son Derek Holt as executive of the state. Mr. Pike continued. The primary asset is the residence on Westridge Woods Boulevard. Derek smiled wider. He shot me a look that said, watch this. The residence is to pass in full to Derek Holt, the attorney said. There it was. Derek let out a low chuckle. Told you. Mr. Pike went on, reading in that flat, careful tone lawyers use when they don't want to own words. Furniture, personal effects, a few small accounts. I heard almost none of it. My chest felt tight, like Simeon had cinched a strap around it. I stared at the edge of the table, fluid grain blurring as my eyes burned. So, Derek said when Mr. Pike paused, that's it, right? The attorney hesitated. There are additional documents attached to the estate file. Papwork, Derek cut in, waving a hand. Always paperwork. He turned tome, then really looked at me, his eyes sharp and cold in a way they'd never been when Elaine was alive. Hope you enjoy being homeless, he said, because I made sure you get nothing. The words landed hard. I felt he'd rush up my neck, my ears burning. My hand trembled as I reached for the paper cup of coffee in front of me. The liquid sloshed over the rim, splashing onto my flannel. Damn, Derek laughed. See there, Ray. I set the cup down too fast. Coffee dripped onto the carpet, dark and ugly. The attorney cleared his throat again. Mr. Holt, please, it's fine, Derek said. He knows how this works, right, Ray? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth felt dry, my tongue thick. As Mr. Pike gathered the paper, something in the folder caught my eye. A Pauline envelope folded once with blocky handwriting across the front. Proper Tidax 2016, my handwriting. I'd written that sitting at the kitchen table across from me. The TV humming in the background. Wheel of Fortune. She'd been yelling answers at the screen, laughing when she got them wrong. My pulse picked up. There's one more thing. Mr. Pike said slowly, like he was choosing his words. "We'll need to schedule a follow-up regarding." Derek stood. "I vegged a call with a realtor. You can mail whatever else to my lawyer." He leaned down close enough that I could smell his cologne. "Too much of it sharp and sweet. Don't take this personal," he murmured. "You were just my mom's husband." Then has straightened, nodded at the attorney, and walked out. The door clicked shut. "Bent him, Mr. Pike. Mr. Cullen, I'm sorry." The envelope, at my own handwriting, staring back at me like a question I hadn't answered yet. "I'd like copies," I said. The attorney paused, then nodded. "Of course." Outside, the air was cold and clean. I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, breathing it in, my heart still racing. Derek thought he'd finished me, but something told me he'd never really looked at the fine print. The motel sat just off I-74. One of those low concrete buildings with flickering holly lights and doors that open straight to the parking lot. My room smelled faintly of bleach and old cigarettes. No matter how long I left the door open, the mattress sagged in the middle, and when I sat down, the springs complained like they'd been holding grudges for years. I didn't turn in the TV right away. I just set the shoebox on the bed and stared at it. For a while, I thought about not opening it at all. Elaine used to say I had a way of reading things too carefully. Contracts, manuals, warranties. She'd teased me about it, but she also trusted me with everything that mattered. When the furnace broke, when the roof leaked, when the bank sent letters she didn't want to look at, those all came to me. Now she was gone, and that habit felt like the only thing I still had. I opened the box. Paper spilled out in uneven stacks, envelopes yellowed at the edges, folded statements, handwritten receipts from Menards, old escrow summaries, a manila folder labeled house in thick black marker. The TV came on by accident when my elbow brushed the remote. Static crackled, then settled into a rerun of MASH. Hawkeye was saying something about war never making sense. I left it on low. The noise helped. Is Ad cross-legged on the bed and started sorting mortgage statements first. Year after year, my name typed neatly at the top. I'd forgotten how many there were. 11 years worth minimum payments never missed, even during the winter when the water plant cut hours. And I picked up overtime just to keep things steady. I swallowed hard and kept going. Proper tax bills, insurance renewals, a stack of canceled checks I'd saved for no real reason other than habit. Then I saw it, a thin packet clipped together with Feward's home equity line of credit printed across the front. My pulse thudded in me ears. I flipped through slowly, afraid of what I might find and more afraid of what I might not. There it was. Page 3. Borrow a Raymond Collins, co-signer na. Property Westridge Woods Boulevard. The signature at the bottom was mine, written in that careful, slightly slanted way. I always wrote my name when something mattered. I leaned back against the headboard and closed my eyes. Elaine's credit had been bad when we married. Not reckless, just old medical bills and one ugly divorce that followed her longer than it should have. The bank had approved the Holilic Bess I'd insisted on being the guarantor. Just in case, I'd said. Just in case. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I almost dropped it when I grabbed it. Ray, it was Jim Keller, an old coworker from the water plant. "Yeah, okay? I'm hanging in," I said. Jim hesitated. "Listen, I don't want to stir anything up, but Derek's been asking around about you. Your finances. Told a couple guys you were freeloading off his mum." My stomach tightened. What exactly is he asking? Whether you've got money, whether you're going to try something. I stared at the paperwork in my lap. "Did you tell him anything?" "No," Jim said. "Didn't seem right." "Thanks," I said quietly. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time staring at my signature. Derek was sniffing around. That means felt confident enough to be careless or nervous enough to start digging. It went back to the box, hand steady now. Tucked between two old utility bills was a folded piece of notebook paper. I recognized Elaine's handwriting instantly. Rounded letters the way she always dotted her I's with little circles. "Ray, thank you for keeping this house standing for us. I know I don't always say it, but I see what you do." My vision blurred. I pressed the paper flat with my palm, breathing slowly until the tightness in my chest eased. That note had been there the whole time. Derek had never even known it existed. The TV crackled again. Laughter from second audience. Life going on somewhere else. I gathered the papers into neat stacks. Mortgage, taxes, Hellock, proof, years of it. This wasn't about talking anything from Derek, not really. It weighs about not being erased. The next morning, I drove into town and parked in front of a small office with a hand-painted sign in the window. Jensen Law Probate and Real Estate. The building wasn't fancy. The door stuck when I pulled it open. Inside, a woman in her 60s looked up from a yellow legal pad. Short gray hair, sensible shoes. "Can I help you?" she asked. I set the shoebox on her desk. "I think so," I said, "but I'm going to need you to read fine print." She lifted an eyebrow, then she smiled just a little. "All right," she said. "Let's see what you got." Marla Jensen didn't rush. That was the first thing I noticed. She read every page the way Elaine used to read recipes. Slow, deliberate finger tracking the lines like she was listening for something underneath the words. Her office smelled like old paper and black coffee. A single window looked out onto Main Street where a pickup rumbled past and someone laughed on the sidewalk. "This isn't nothing," Mara said at last, tapping the Helic packet with her pen. "This is leverage." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. But she continued holding a pwned finger. "It's not a hammer. Not yet." She explained it in plain language the way I appreciated. The line of credit was still active. The lien was real. Any sale or refinance on the house would force it into the open. And my records, mortgage payments, taxes, maintenance gave me a strong position to file a creditor's claim through probate. "The trick," she said, "is patience." Patience had never been my problem. Silence, maybe. Waiting I could do. The courthouse became my second home. Poria County wasn't in any hurry to help Anyon, especially not a man with a shoebox of old papers and no appointment. I waited in plastic chairs under flickering lights. I paid copying fees, I filled out forms and triplicate my hand cramping halfway through. Once a clerk slid my paperwork back across the counter and said, "You're missing an exhibit." "Which one?" I asked. She shrugged. "You tell me." I went back to the motel that night, more tired than angry. I lay on the bed listening to the hum of the ice machine outside and wondered not for the first time if Lane would be disappointed in me for pushing this far. That night, I dreamed she was standing in the kitchen arms crossed watching me read a stack of documents. "You're doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" I asked, making sure you don't get burned. I woke up before I could answer, heart pounding the note from her still folded in my wallet. Meanwhile, Derek was busy. I heard about it from everywhere. From Jim at plant, from a guy at the VFW Fish Free, who didn't realize I was standing 2 tables away. Derek was ripping out the old garden, putting in new siding, talking about adding value and flipping it fast. One Friday night, I drove past house without thinking. A work truck was parked out front, floodlights blazing. The fence I'd painted just last summer lay in pieces on the lawn board stacked like bones. It hurt more than I expected. Mara told me not to make a contact. "Let him spend," she said. "Every improvement makes him more confident, and confidence makes people sloppy." So I stayed quiet. We filed the creditor's claim. We attached the proof. We waited for the notice to go out. Derek didn't respond at first. Then his attorney called Mara loud and dismissive. Called my claim desperate and baseless. Mara listened, thanked him, and hung up. "Good," she said. "That means they're paying attention now." The probate hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Derek would have to show up. He wouldn't be able to bully his way through it with a text messenger, a lock change. The night before I sat in my car outside the motel engine off watching the glow of the street lights in wet pavement. I thought about the first winter Ella and I spent in that house when the furnace failed and we slept in the living room with space heaters and extra blankets. We'd laughed through it, made coffee on a hot plate, told ourselves it was temporary. This standing up for myself felt permanent. It took a deep breath and drove back inside. Tomorrow, everything would be out in the open. The Peoria County courthouse always felt colder than it needed to be. Even in summer, the air conditioning hummed like it was trying to preserve something fragile. The metal detector beeped when I walked through, and the deputy waved me along without looking up. I arrived early. Too early. Old habit. I sat on a wooden bench in the hallway outside probate courtroom. The hands folded, knees bouncing just enough to annoy myself. Every few seconds I checked the clock on the wall. The tick sounded louder than it should have. Mara Jensen showed up 10 minutes later carrying a thin briefcase and a styrofoam cup of coffee. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Ask me again in Anher." She smiled once. "Fair." Derek came in loud just like he had at Thule reading. His shoes echoed off the tile. He had his attorney with him this time, a tall man with slick back hair and a smile that looked practiced in a mirror. There was a younger woman trailing them, phone in hand, whispering gout listings and open houses. Derek spotted me and smirked. "Didn't think you'd actually show?" he said. "I live a her," I replied. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He laughed and turned to his lawyer. "Told you he thinks this is going to end differently. The bailiff called us in. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No drama, no grand stage, just a judge, a few rows of benches, and that quiet weight of things being decided whether you liked it or not. We took our places." Derek went first. His attorney spoke quickly, confidently, painting me as a bitter afterthought, a man grasping at paperwork because he couldn't accept that he wasn't family. He was a guest, the attorney said, nothing more. Few words stung even now. Then Mara stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't pace. She laid documents on the podium one by one, explaining each in plain English. Mortgage payments, proper taxes, maintenance receipts, years off them. The judge leaned forward. Derek stopped smiling. "And finally," Mara said, "there is an active home equity line of credit attached to the property." Derek's attorney frowned. "That was never mentioned." "It wasn't closed," Mara said calmly. "And Mr. Collins is sole guarantor." The judge looked at Derek. "Is that correct?" Derek opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his attorney. That can't be right," he said. "My mom wouldn't." "She did," Mara said, "because she trusted him." Therum went very quiet. The judge asked for financial disclosures. Derek's attorney smirked and asked the same of him, clearly expecting a punchline. Mara handed over a single sheet. The judge read it slowly. I watched Derek's face change as the numbers were read aloud. "My pension, my savings, the duplex I'd bought years before Elaine never sold. Not rich, but not broke, not disposable. And when you factor in the creditor claim and lien priority, the judge said Mr. Collins' net position exceeds the remaining equity in the estate." Derek stood up too fast. "That's not possible," he said. "He's got nothing. I made sure of it." The judge looked over his glasses. "Sit down, Mr. Holt." Derek didn't. His face had gone pale, sweat beating at his temples. He took one step back, bumped into the bench, and reached out like the room was moving. Then his knees buckled. He hit the floor hard, the sound echoing through the courtroom. Someone shouted. The bailiff rushed forward. The realtor gasped. I stayed seated. My hands were trembling, but I folded them together and breathed. Elaine's note pressed warm against my chest and my wallet. The judge called RSS. As people crowded around Derek, I stared at the empty space in front of him and felt something settle inside my bones. Not victory, relief. They took Derek out on a stretcher. That part still sits strange with me. I didn't stand. I didn't lean in to look. I stayed where I was, hands folded, staring at the grain in the wooden bench like it was something I could read if I tried hard enough. People whispered, shoe scuffed. The bailiff cleared the room with that tired authority you only get from seeing too many endings in one building. When the courtroom emptied, Mara sat beside me. You did fine, she said. I nodded, but my throat felt tight. I didn't want him to pass out. She gave a small shrug. Truth does that sometimes. The judge called us back in after thepramedics left. No drama this time. Just process, deadlines, options. Derek's attorney suddenly spoke softer. Careful like a man who'd realized he'd misjudged the room. In the end, we settled. I could have pushed harder. Mara told me that plainly. I had the position to force a sale to take back, more than I ever imagined standing in that grocery store parking lot weeks earlier. But standing there listening to paper shuffle, I kept seeing Elaine's face, not sick, not tired. But the way she looked on quiet Sunday mornings barefoot in the kitchen, coffee in her hand, humming without realizing it. So, I chose fair. Derek kept the house on the condition that my creditor claim was paid in full and the lien resolved properly. No shortcuts, no favors, clean paper, clean break. The check cleared 2 weeks later. I didn't celebrate. I bought a used recliner from a place 1 Oxville Avenue and a small dining table that fit just right by the window. I moved into a 1-story bungalow near the Illinois River, close enough to Heartwater at night if the windows were a pen. I planted tomatoes in the backyard the way Elaine used to close set together on purpose. She always said they liked the company. On my first evening there, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and listened to the cicada start up. No locks clicking behind me, no footsteps coming to push me out, just quiet. A week later, I mailed Derek an envelope. No money inside, no note about court or settlements or mistakes, just a photo. Elaine at the county fair, laughing hair blown sideways by the wind. One hand shielding her eyes from sun. The woman he forgot in the rush to claim what he thought was owed to him. I don't know if he kept it. I don't know if it mattered. What mattered was this. I hadn't been erased. I learned something through all of it. Something I wish I'd understood sooner. Kindness doesn't mean weakness. And patience doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes it just means waiting long enough for the truth to have room to stand up. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt pushed aside after doing everything right, paying the bills, keeping the lights on, holding things together when no one was watching, I want you to hear this clearly. You matter. Your work matters. Your name on the paperwork matters. And it's never too late to stand up for yourself the right way. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Take a minute to check your own papers. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, quiet victories earned the hard way, subscribe and stay with us. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. Sometimes it just waits.